right, and welcome to a new episode of Chuck and Tuck. He's Chuck, I'm Tuck, and if you're wondering, today my voice will go from Barry Manilow, like that old tape your grandma used to put on the media center in the front room, and as well as the 13-year-old version of me getting yelled at by Mr. Earl Sears running the hallways at Central Middle School. So it'll be a wild 8-second ride here today, but we're going to talk all things safety here today with Superintendent McCauley. Chuck, how have you been since our last episode?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's hard to believe the end of October is upon us, but yeah, had a great October and looking forward to the fall.
Yeah, we've had so many things go on in October. You know, we kicked off October with homecoming. We had the Bruin and Capitol Hill, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But we've had so many great events happen this month, and we're looking forward to finishing strong at all of our sites up until holiday break. So with safety today, I can remember first engaging with police officers through Central Middle School. We had a DARE officer, Dare to be Cool, get the little red ribbons, you know, and that officer, I can't think of his name, but he had kids that were my age who came through during our time here together at the high school. But it was the first positive interaction that I feel like I had with an officer outside of like going out and fishing at Joel and Low. Like, I don't know if you remember that as happening in our community. But it was such a great way to build that relationship. And I feel that so many times within our community and other communities like ours across the country, there's always punitive interactions with police officers. And so with this approach, with having school resource officers, we're able to have that kind of community-oriented policing and build that positive interaction. So kind of talk about throughout your time here with BPS, where has the school resource officer program kind of gone since when you were here at the high school as principal to now as superintendent here in 2024?
Yeah, it's been quite a shift over the years. I started working here at the high school in 2001 as an assistant principal, and I worked here for 8 years. I was an assistant high school principal and then the principal, but when I started, we had one resource officer that was here part-time. And that shifted. That person, funding for that changed. And then so went through some years where we didn't have any resource officers, which people are always amazed by that. So I've worked here for several years where we didn't have a resource officer. And so, you know, and just the world has changed over the years. And we were in a position just a few years ago where we were back, I believe we had 3 resource officers. And I know what really struck me was when the tragedy in Uvalde happened. And that was in, it was right before Memorial Day, 2022. And, that tragedy at elementary school. And what we had, at that point, we were moving towards slowly adding some resource officers, but I immediately, when that happened, I sent a text message out, small town. Mike Bailey, our city manager, and Tracy Rolls, who was our police chief at the time, and said, we need to talk about the future of resource officers. We need to talk. And so, matter of fact, we met, I think it was a Tuesday after Memorial Day, and kind of our conversation was, what's the best thing we can do? What's the absolute best thing it's hard you can't avoid everything, but what's the best thing we can do? And we talked about different options, if we were to add an officer or two, and response times at different schools and just different things where we could have them. Of course, Chief Rolls was a big proponent of resource officers and really wanted to have them in all of our schools. And so as we talked through it, we really kind of landed on, we felt like the best thing where we had a gap was having, we need to have a resource officer at every school. And, we had invested heavily in, as a district, in the infrastructure needed for things you don't think about now, just with secured entrances and locks on doors and even some film on some windows. And we replaced all of our video cameras and expanded them throughout. But really where we felt like we had a gap was just in personnel, because people are busy at a school, as you know. You go in and, you have people in the office that just like yourself, they do several different jobs, but didn't necessarily have anybody that was solely focused on that and trained as a police officer, and you have all those skills. And so it was a big lift for our city. Really, the timing of it, I really think the good Lord was looking out for us, because the timing of like the city council, their budget time going into the next fiscal year, because it was an investment. Because even if you want to add some officers, it takes time. Obviously, they need to keep officers. That's what makes one of the things that makes our city great is we have such good infrastructure in place. And so they needed to be able to hire officers to replace the officers that were going to be coming into the schools. That takes time. They get to get them trained. And so we were able to, over the last couple of years to get to the point where we are today, where, now we have a resource officer in every building. We have 2 here at the high school. We have some help with that. And we knew back that, felt like the legislature was going to help us some after that Uvalde, but we just couldn't wait. And so our community stepped up, our school specifically. Truity Education Foundation helped us with a couple large donations. They continue to help offset that funding because it is a tremendous expense. Because every police officer that we have, they're a full-time Bartlesville police officer. That's what they are. And then the district, we pay for basically 75% of their salary. So that's a big investment. But we just felt like that was the best thing we can do. And really and it has been, and what it's turned into is not necessarily sure things happen, but on the punitive side, like you shared, Anthony, but I love it. I have the opportunity to go to every school every week, and, I see them greeting kids every day walking in the door, the relationships that they're building, the trust that's built. A couple of years ago, we had a state superintendent visited. We were down at Kane Elementary, and we had him reading to our first grade class and asked about 5 kids what they wanted to be when they grew up. And I think 2 or 3 of them said they wanted to be a teacher, and the other 2 or 3 said they wanted to be a police officer. So, which really did my heart well. So anyway, so it's been quite a journey to get to the point where we now have 10 school resource officers in our district. There's also one out at Tri-County Tech. We have a couple hundred kids that go over there. So it's a great partnership we have with the city. I think it gives great comfort to our staff, I think to our parents, our neighbors, and just all to know that we have that in place. And then, but what I see on a daily basis is really just their work building those relationships, and also just connecting our kids and families maybe with some services where they can get some additional support.
Yeah, and I was reading an article on Education Week, and they polled all the SROs, a majority of them throughout our country, and they said that 45% of their day is mentoring. We have so many kids, so many social and behavioral issues that happen within our student body across our sites, more so now than when you and I were together here. And so the police officer is almost that first point of contact. If there's a safety plan implemented, they're doing personal check-ins with that kid. I've witnessed here at our high school campus plenty of times where they're able to be that first point of contact of building trust back, to feel comfortable back at school after something that might have occurred outside of our school building. So 45% say mentoring, that's really important, because you really got to mix that up. That traditional pathway that we used to see, where you would connect with your counselor, your coach, those are still all, important people within the equation. But it takes a whole village, like the old saying does, to raise a child. And when they're here, we provide that village for them to kind of level up and feel comfortable. So,
yeah, I agree completely. And, I appreciate it's all about relationships. It's all about the people. And just like any position, any role, just like what you're doing, Anthony. I'm so glad you're back and here serving our community and school. But not every police officer was cut out to be a resource officer. There's some that get into that for different reasons. They want that punitive side and go catch the bad guys, and we need that.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily what we need at a school. We need someone that has that ability to, maybe to have that partial counselor hat and building that relationship and to be able to build that with the kids and that trust with the family. But there's no other district, large school like we are, that have this type of support with our resource officers. I mean, there's some different things, different places, but it's something I'm very proud of that our community's been able to provide. And I see it's turned into one of those that I believe it's a need, not a want, and that we'll continue to invest in.
Yeah, and I think the advent of the SRO is kind of the 90s. You saw the Gun-Free School Zone Act in 1990, which was then reshaped after the constitutional challenge in 95, U.S. v. Lopez. But then, you also have the community-oriented policing, the COPS Act, the 94 Crime Violent Offenders which opened up a lot of grants, which got the first SROs, most of them part-time,
Right.
but that kind of opened the door and then allowed us to kind of move forward where we can have that local control and partner with our municipality to bring these options to our school. So speaking of safety, what do you think are the key components to a safe school within our district?
Well, I think there's some infrastructure that needs to be in place. I talked about earlier. There's some things with the environment. I think staffing as well. But I think probably the number one thing is just have a culture built where if you see something, if there's something going on, is we need to be able to say something. We need to have a relationship with an adult, whoever that adult may be. May not even be your own teacher, but somebody that you can go to because usually it's an issue where it can be dealt with. Someone knows it's going to happen, or there might be something in the wind. And so, but just have that culture built that, we're all Bruins. We're all in this together.
Yes.
And so I think that's the key component.
And we have monitoring systems that help with that. So we're able to track kids, even if they didn't mean anything malintent. Right. We're able to have that check-in, at least say, hey, what's going on? And they're like, most of the time, like with my interns, they're doing like French 4. They're doing something I never would have done. And I'm like, oh, I see why you searched that. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. And I think a real key component of that safe school environment and structure is having that director of safety with Carrie Eichelberry and having somebody who is literally impacting every site and working with you to kind of implement that bigger strategy.
Carrie's wonderful. And you talk about somebody with a servant's heart. That's Carrie Eichelberry. And she's really the point of contact when we get it, especially folks from maybe a concern from outside or a parent, which I get it. You have a kid and maybe you have a young kid and you're getting ready to roll in school and all you see maybe on social media, all these things happening across the country. And it can be scary. And so I've connected with her often, have her reach out, and she'll sit down and visit with the parents, have them tour schools to see what things are like. And so really appreciate her. Obviously, it helps she's married to the chief of police.
Shout out, class of 1981.
That's right.
Call high, my guy, Chief Eichelberry. So,
yeah, but she's great. She spends most of her day here, but she just really truly does a servant's heart and is here to serve. So we're very fortunate in our school and community to have both of them, really.
And she does have photos of me as a child, so do not ask her to leak those, please. Don't bother Carrie with that information. She used to babysit me, her and her niece. So sometimes if I'm out of control, she'll be like, "I got the photos, I got the evidence, my guy," and I'm like, "Okay."
Good to
but
know.
she's such a positive impact, like on our culture. Like, she'll just lift you up. You're having a bad day, and she's like, "Hey, you're doing the right thing. I promise." I'm like, "Okay." Well, it's been a rough day. It's been some rough waters, but I appreciate that.
And she's amazing.
So kind of looking outward beyond safety, and we start looking at things that we've had go on in this past month in October. It is Halloween today, so bless everybody at every school site within BPS. It is going to be a long day, my friends, especially here at the high school. So we start off, we had homecoming, which was amazing. It was a hard-fought loss against the Pulpit Chieftains, an old rival of ours that we've been playing for a long, long time. Went to double overtime. Everybody, it takes a whole village. I know I used that earlier, but the band, Bruin TV had the helmet cam. If you guys haven't seen that, you look up at the big board. They had the dance cam going. I mean, it's a full-blown production with Scott Vermeer and his team and Director Kane and the band, which I know that they just were in Muskogee for regionals, and they performed really well. I know that Principal Harp was there cheering them on. After that, we had the Bruins AK. So if you kind of want to talk about that experience.
Yeah, so homecoming was a great event. Everything, I wish we could have got the victory, obviously, but but it's just, and we still have, we've got a couple home football games left too. So hopefully people will come out and support us, support our kiddos. But yeah, we had the Bruin AK, which we talked some about last month, and and that was the first time that our foundation has put on their own race. No, Anthony, you were a part of that too. So really appreciate Blair Ellis and her staff. But there was 460 participants. About 200 staff members sign up. We had 110 fifth graders.
Wow.
The Bruins on the Run complete that, and that's hard. So I'm really proud of them. And then plus we had another 60 kids of other ages that participated, and really thankful for our mentors that went through that, training the kids for that, because it's kind of a couch to this is an 8K couch to an 8K. A lot of these kids have never done this before. And so they start pretty quick after school's out and doing that a couple of days a week. And, as we all know, the weather this fall was a warm season. So
hopefully after last night's kind of cold front that came in our community, we've hit fall.
I hope so. I hope.
Shockingly, very hopeful.
I think the last time we talked, I was saying the same thing a month ago. I was like, surely. We got some rain, but yeah, it was a great event, and just all the volunteers that went into that. I mean, gosh, we had. Cody Mead, we had some volunteers get up at the crack of dawn to put the Bruin head up. I mean, these things don't magically happen.
No.
I mean, all the work that goes into that, all those, food provided, and, Chris Batchelder on the mic, and you can hear him literally all over town when he speaks.
Can confirm that, yes. I love you, Batch, but yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, and so it's really something that I think the group has decided that they want to continue with having that. It's going to be a good fall event. We're going to continue to have that. I think we'll have some different options next year once the work on the Pathfinder is different. So we're kind of hopeful we can move it over here, by the high school ag center and get people in that. But it was a great event. And then of course, we're transitioning with our fall activities, finishing up, and obviously we still got football going on. But you just mentioned the Bruin Brigade. Their competitive season just ended yesterday. With another great performance in their regional. But volleyball and softball had a tremendous season. Volleyball, I know we were all there. It was a heartbreaking loss to go to state, and they lost in 5 sets. But they had a tremendous season. And Andrew Blaine's first year, following Jen Ward, who really built a great culture of a lot of girls playing volleyball. And I think we're going to be good for years to come. And then softball, that was great. I was able to catch our girls win regionals over at Ponca City. I watched. The quarterfinal lost to Owasso streaming because we had football that night. But how about that? We lost in extra innings. I mean, that was and we had our chances. They went on one. Owasso went on one in the state championship, and we lost in 8 innings, and really had a chance to win. We had a great pitching performance. Kelsey Yales, I think that's right. I hope I said that first name right too. But she's coming back next year, so really happy for them. Then cross country will finish up this year. They have their state meet this weekend, and just kind of transitioning into the winter activities from there.
And we're excited. And speaking of softball, they got to play in the Hall of Fame Stadium complex down in Oklahoma City, which will host the 2028 Olympics. So it's kind of cool. The kids got to experience that before they see it on NBC coming up. Will Bob Costas still be calling the Olympics at that time?
Probably.
I watched a great documentary with him the other day. He used to be the play-by-play announcer for the Spirits of St. Louis in the ABA. That's how he got his start. He was at Syracuse, and then his buddy was running the Spirits, who only lasted 2 seasons before they merged into the NBA. But yeah, good old Bob Costas.
I may rethink my vote of whether he's going to be doing the Olympics. I didn't realize he was quite that old. Okay, it's good. It's good input.
It's good info. Speaking of volleyball, real quick, shout out Emery Brown.
Oh yeah.
I saw her, talked with her yesterday. She had her UMKC Rouge shirt on, so she's going D1. So we're excited for her. I think those girls wrapped up. I was talking to Emerson Casey, who is a senior as well, wrapping up softball. She was wearing a Owasso shirt when she came to see me, and I was like, whoa. It's too soon. Let's give it a little time. Like, shout out. You guys almost beat them. And then for the Bruin AK real quick, shout out to Cody and the team who brought that. That Bruin was in Muskogee that night before when the Bruins took on the #1 Roughers, and they brought it back and got it up. And they also turned it. So when you went out, they turned the Bruin around. And then I was with Bruiser the Bruin for a little bit, and then I was driving the Gator around, and I will tell you that it was fun, and seeing friends that work in the district and also just friends in the community. They were not happy just seeing me drive up by them and be like, hey, good job, you're doing awesome, just keep going while I'm driving this John Deere Gator.
Yeah, we had I thought it was really good for folks that, staff or just supporters that maybe they didn't want to have anything to do with participating in the room, but they could just come out and cheer for our kids.
Yeah.
And so I know I have I've got my Aunt Mary Ballard, my wife's aunt, who's a retired teacher. She's in her 80s, and I saw her out in Laterne, was out there cheering for her kids to do that too. So that's something I think we can build on for the future.
And that was a big conversation the other day when, the foundation board and the race committee got together, was like, this is a great celebration of being Bruins.
Right.
And how do we just build on that? And we know you talked about transitioning the route a little bit so we can have some more control over the finish. I thought the spirit was really high. And, it wasn't that long ago that all of our elementary schools and our middle school converted over to being Bruins. Has that been, 3-4 years?
Yeah, I got probably 3 or 4 years in there too. And really, that came to us from, we were in a meeting with our parents, and we had a central parent who's had a daughter that went to Kane, and really felt like that was an issue with her daughter going to Central, and kind of felt like, the Wayside and Jane Phillips and Kane kids coming together, that was a problem. They kind of felt like they weren't all Bruins.
Yeah.
And so Spence Rigdon was a big part of that. When he was here, he felt strongly, and really timing was great with some of our facility changes where we were able to do some things to make them, if you go by the entrances over at Kane and Wilson, and of course over Wayside as well, and the gym floors. I mean, it makes a difference for kids to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And so when they see that Bruins, when the Bruins come over and read to the kids in the elementary schools, I mean, all that, it all matters. It matters that they're part of it.
It's building that cohesion. We can talk about branding and all that. That's my background, but it's really that community cohesion that we're all rowing the ship in the boat together.
That's right.
Because we're just 82 to now, so we're basically 42 years past becoming the Bruins after we merged and consolidated into one high school. So it's crazy. Scott and I were talking about this in Batch and Blair the other day, was about that decision way back then. And then I was like, it had to be 10 years ago that Chuck had worked with everybody to get that done. They're like, nah, it was just a couple years ago. So it's very recent, but it's cool. So some things that we do have coming up on the agenda. I know that Ms. Lachevsky here and Student Council at the high school getting ready to host a great event here, the State Student Council Convention. The flags are all up in the BHS Commons of every school that will be represented today or throughout this celebration. So it's crazy to think that we're going to be hosting that. We have so many great community partners. The school is decorated. It feels kind of like homecoming week. And then we also have Bruin football coming up tomorrow night, November 1st, taking on Putnam City West. And then we have senior night next Friday at Custer Stadium against Capitol Hill. The Bruins have a great shot to win out and to make the first round of this 6A2 playoffs. Again, we're going from Barry Manilow down to 13-year-old me. Real quick about Bruin football, what I've loved about the development of the game experience is, and you can remember this because you have that institutional knowledge of being here so long, but getting everyone involved. I was able to work with Oklahoma National Army Guard, and they brought a T-shirt cannon. I don't know why they trusted it with me, but somebody let them through the door through the gate with it. And I worked with cheer and, great cheer squad and pom squad, and we were able to fire it off, and the kids were just going bananas. And then it ran out of juice, and I accidentally hit somebody right over the rail, and I was just like, so sorry. But it's just having a great time and celebrating everything that makes us us. So we have a lot of great things coming up. I know that also as we move into Thanksgiving break, speaking of resources and safety and caring for our kids, we do have people on site and at the district level that help identify kids and families that might be at risk, to connect them with community resources, to make sure that they have a meal, if they're going without into break, because that is such a tough time when we don't get those touch points with those kids that are at risk. Yeah,
it's that's been, also, I think being able to provide meals for kids, all kids.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that previously, but I just finished up I do a coffee at every school with their staff, and I just finished those up yesterday at Kane, and every site has mentioned, talked about, it's created some challenge because more kids are eating, so just the cafeteria line and staffing up too, but what a benefit it has been. I mean, it's really, every school, it seems like they've almost doubled or tripled the number of meals that are served, and so I think especially as the older kids get, it takes some of that stigma away.
Yeah.
And to make sure that kids are fed and safe.
Yeah, and I think you know my backstory, but so many things, so many credences give to where your address is at, right? We can look at data that says educational attainment level, socioeconomic factors that impact your pathway to success. But just like when we used to use MapQuest and print it out where we're going, there's a starting point and there's a finishing point for our kids. And just because where you're at now isn't where you want to be.
Right.
But a thing that I had to learn as I matured as an adult was, don't be ashamed of where you're at now. If we all started where we needed to be, there'd be no growth, there'd be no progress, right? We have to go through that struggle sometimes to make those gains. And, as a kid growing up in Oak Park, 304 Highland Drive, I drove out there the other day. Sometimes I use it as motivation for myself. because my kids now will have a completely different lifestyle than I did. So I love working with those kids. I love working with all kids, and it really is a gift to have that opportunity. But keep working. And the parents out there that are working double shift and doing everything they can. We in education, we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those things that impact a kid's success in the classroom.
Sure.
Keep working.
Sure.
Because one time it's going to crack open. There's going to be somebody on the other side that's going to have a bag of keys that can open a door for you of opportunity. And I know we've hit home on that with, class of 2007 grad Taylor Doe with And Then Moments. But it's so crucial for our kids and our parents and our grandparents that are involved to know that you've got to keep pushing. And there'll be moments of failure, and that's part of it. I remember outside this hallway, we used to have numbers with our test scores, and Mr. Meadows would have, I'd go out there and look and be like, oh, this isn't a good start. But all that can change. Just keep pushing, because I can tell you, if I thought as a kid where I was at growing up, how I did, which I thought my cup was full, just having a great family and people supporting me like yourself. But if you had told me I would travel the world and do all these things and then come back home and start raising two beautiful girls, I'd be like, nah, I don't know. That's stranger than fiction. Freddy Krueger seems more realistic. Shout out.
I had a similar, I was always working, when you were here at the high school, and I was principal talking to kids, and I was the first person in my family to go to college as well. I grew up in a very similar, a lot of similarities as your different town, but a lot of similarities. And so I know, but talking to kids, building relationships with them, which that's what I enjoyed that best of being a high school principal, talking to kids about what their futures, what they were interested in. And a lot of them don't know, which is okay. But I said, I would tell them at the time, I said, if you'd have told me that time, 20 years ago when I was 17, that I want to be the Bartlesville High School principal, I'd have said, you are nuts. There's just no way. But, because I couldn't, you're not ready to see that yet. But I knew I needed to do something. I knew I needed to go to college and get on that experience. I was capable of doing that. So, so it's when that light comes on. I mean, it comes on for everybody at different times. But you're right. The key is, being where you're at, and where you're at's okay, and giving it your best every day.
Yeah, and seek out opportunities, seek out mentorship. Speaking of which, we have multiple new partnerships coming up for our internship program at the high school. We got 149 kids. Within that program, some of them are doing employment skills where they get to leave work 2 hours early, like we talked about previous episodes. But take advantage of those opportunities, because you never know who's going to be the one to open up and be like, you know what, I did it this way. This was my path, and here are some lessons I learned along the way. Because the access and experience are important, and hands-on on the job training are important, but relationships, that's, to me, the most critical element that we provide through our partnership with our community partners. I
agree. What great soft skills kids get the opportunity to outside, not being at home and not being here, but being out within that business community. And so it's a great training ground for them, because that's what we hear from our employers. They want to see kids, folks with that work ethic and that ability to get along with others and be part of the team.
And, we're super excited to kind of the redevelopment of our alumni association, and partnering up with Bruins all over the country to make sure that we provide mentorship and potential career opportunities for our current Bruins as they're out there. So we will be back with you in November for episode 4. He's Chuck. I'm Tuck. Thanks for joining us today.